Today is a Voice of America Tour Part 2. We're going to be looking at the grounds and type of the antennas they use. We're going to be looking at the transmitter room. And finally, we're going to go outside and look at the antenna switch on Take Radio! So play that awesome intro video! A quick shout out to all my Patreons who makes the show possible. You can support me by joining Patreon in the link below. And on to Take Radio!
Our propagation room is how we explain what we did, how we push signals around. I'll start with this map here because the green dot is us here in Cincinnati. That we were the first to develop the transmitters and to get all the electronic equipment working. Then they built two sites in California, Delano and Dixon, basically San Francisco and LA area. And then, as I mentioned before, when Vietnam kicked in, they built out the gigantic site in Greenville, North Carolina. The other red dots are relay stations. We had 18 transmitting plants all over worldwide, and many of these relay stations were gigantic. The one here in Liberia is the size of Greenville. It's they took up 3 square miles, had as many antennas as Greenville did, and these others are relay stations. I will point out the one off the island of Rhodes in Greece. We were friendly with Greece, and we could not push a strong signal into Russia from here. Neither could Greenville or neither could the California stations. So what they did is they positioned a ship off the island of Rhodes, Greece, with a 150,000 watt transmitter to push into Russia. And one of these curtains here was pointed to North Africa, which pushed it right into the Greece so that we could get a very strong signal into that ship. It was a Coast Guard ship because it's non-confrontational. Military, of course, has transmitters on their ships, but they've got guns, so they used a Coast Guard cutter. So this is not to scale. This is just to demonstrate what we did and how we did it. We're in the back part of the building right now, which is the transmitter building. That brown thing you see right there is called the antenna switch. It's a 6x22 switch, crossbar switch. We have 6 high-power transmitters going into the switch and 22 antenna feeds coming out of the switch. I mean, they could come out either side of the switch. They distributed around the square mile on 300 ohm hard line or hardline matched to the rhombics. The primary antenna for a long time was what's called a rhombic. It's a diamond-shaped antenna. It's a non-resonant antenna, and we use it because it has exceptionally high gain and terrific directionality. But we covered 5 megahertz to 20 megahertz, and we did it in 3 rhombics. For every target country, there were 7 target countries, we had 3 rhombics pointing to them. A low frequency, medium frequency, and high frequency. These were broadband rhombics, 3-wire rhombics, so we could tune anywhere from 5 to 20 megahertz using one of these 3 rhombics. Very directional, and when the 60s came along, we put in the curtain antennas. These had about 15 dB of gain, and the curtains will have upwards of 20, 21 dBi of gain. And so we were able to get rid of about half of the rhombics and did a lot of work off this. One pointed to Europe, and the other pointed to Africa, North Africa. Okay, so the transmitter, this is 1 250,000 watt transmitter from that wall to that wall. It's 2 stories high here at this end of the building, 60 feet back and 25 feet wide, and it's all occupied. It's all transmitter. And we are standing here at the control head right now, and in the back, of course, was the power supply room, huge air handling operation. And when you came through that glass door, the average temperature in here is 110 degrees. So everybody came to work in shorts and a thin t-shirt in the middle of the winter. It was that hot in here, and you tried not to be in this room anymore, and you had to. There was a large 23,000 CFM fan in the back of this room, back here, pushing air into the room, and then that fan up there exhausted it. It came out that ductwork there and was circulating through the transmitter. And it was a lot of air movement during operations. There was there were vanes in all the ductwork that were pneumatic operated, and they would sense the temperature in the building and outdoors and heated the building with the transmitters. They never turned on a boiler unless it got down to way below zero. You had plenty of heat to heat even the 3-story administration building. It's automatic tune. When you get close to the frequency, you had to kind of get close to the frequency you wanted to be on, and then hit a button, and it would tune in 12 seconds or less, typically, and was a huge increase in operations because the old Crosley transmitters would take 7 to 10 minutes to tune. Here you could change bands and be back on the air very quickly, and as long as you got the antenna switched, and we pick up more hours of program time. Just to give you a rough thing, it started out to be crystal controlled. Eventually they put a synthesizer in, which you could select your frequency. This is the automatic tune section with indicator lights to tell you what's happening at each of the stages. And where that gentleman is there, behind that, the rack is a 5 kW driver. What drove the final was a 5 kW driver there. And then we'll go back in the transmitter and look at the inside of the transmitter.
There's the final. Oh, there's the vapor cooling section.
This is the final amplifier. The driver's in there. And this is the 250 kW final.
Wow, look at that.
There's 2 of them in parallel. It's a parallel Class C. It's high-level plate modulation. And we use vapor phase cooling. That's the boiler for the tubes. These are filament transformers, 10 volts at 300 amps. They're 3 kW just to fire the filament. So there's 6 kW in just the filament alone.
Awesome. Oh, there's your block. Okay, there's the block diagram for anybody wondering.
Yeah.
There you go. Pause it if you need it. All right.
These are part of the automatic tune. This is the pi circuit. The pi circuit starts at the final amplifier and is 36 feet long. It goes up here, across, down that cabinet, up that cabinet, comes down here, and then goes into there, which is the ballon. There was a 75 ohm transmission line, 75 ohm pi line, if you will, and then that got converted into a ballon. The modulator, 125 kW audio amplifier, basically, and we use vapor phase cooling. What vapor phase cooling is real simple, sounds complicated, but if you want to cool yourself, you and I will blow air on ourselves. I'm going to call that ×1. And if we want to do a better job, we'll pour water over ourselves, the radiator, and a cooling jacket on an automobile engine. You get twice as much cooling. You can get 3 times as much cooling by vapor phase. And what vapor phase is, real simply, is boiling water. And there's 2 questions I like to ask my audience. Is if you're making a pot of spaghetti on the stove, it's boiling away. 2 questions. Is the stove heating the pot, or is the pot keeping the stove cool? Well, it's doing both. As long as you keep putting water back in the pot, you're taking heat out of that stove, right? That's what these did. This is the tube. It's in upside down. That's a boiler. It's a steel container with a boiler, and the steam went up that Pyrex, up to all this copper pipe, up to the roof to a condenser up there, and came back down into a ballast and got put back in the boiler and would just recirculate. We had a 50 gallon per hour still in the basement that would push to a tank in the tower up there, a 400 gallon tank of extra water. And why did we do that? Well, if the transmitter got in trouble and you had to hit the emergency switch and blow the 4160 coming into the power supply and just shut everything down, you've got a room full of hot tubes. You're gonna break them. So it's all gravity feed. So if we had to hit the emergency button, we still had water flowing over all the tubes to cool them down, because IMAC warranted the tubes, but we had to prove 2 things: that we could keep them cool in a catastrophic power failure, and if we had arcs, and we had to have crowbars. We had electronic crowbars on the plate of the modulator and the PA and the screen of the PA to short the B+ to ground if we had arcing going on.
40s, the most popular building to build. You have to build something quick, right? The war's going on. They're trying to do it. This place was built in a year.
Right.
You have to keep that in mind. The most popular building with some type of government was airport building.
Airport.
So it was modeled after airport in terms of the tower.
They just went design
Correct.
7, airport, go.
Pretty much.
Wow.
The building was being built, the antenna field was being built at the same time. I told Frank earlier, the story is that the transmitters were turned on, the roof was not complete, and the antennas were on. That's how quick it was.
Wow.
So in a year to build all of this, it was pretty spectacular. But yes, and this is, again, as Lee explained, so copper 1 inch would come all the way through here, and this is where they would do the switching.
Solid or hollow?
Hollow. Hollow. It was just regular plumbing. And obviously, this has been here for almost 80 years.
Yeah,
so
it's a little rough.
it's
but
going to have,
expected.
yes. But you can see, when you said double throat, double switch,
Yeah.
you can see there, right here, you can see how they would connect in the insulator part on the knife
So
switch.
you had to have those insulators between the wood because you blow it up, you burn your wood up, right? Or
Correct.
Used to it.
Correct.
Wow. Look at that.
So, and then you had your ground when they need to be grounded.
Yeah.
It was, all the way there. Some of the little motors here, this was never automated.
It was
but
always by hand.
it was always by hand, but somebody figured out this and they put it in so it would light up lights, because you have to think, okay, somebody's
sure.
like, hey, you need to go switch
you have to
transmitter.
check.
Somebody's walking out that door, and then, hey, you can't be transmitting while I'm, flipping the things.
Right.
So the levers. So this basically let them know, like, okay, it's on. They would wait like 30 seconds because they knew he was far enough away, and then they would transmit.
Right.
So.
That's fun.
But yeah, so again, when you see a picture, you don't get the scale.
Oh,
of,
it's huge. Yeah.
I mean, that's why I think it was after we did your show, somebody said, how big? I'm like, you can drive a truck to it. Like it's
yeah.
no lie. It's easy to do. But yeah, most of the facilities, when the township took over, we were able to keep this, but the rest is turned into a park at the back. They create a pond now, and there's soccer field there, and the shopping center is actually on the VOA property, which is why it's called the Voice America Center,
Right. Oh, okay. Right on.
because it was part of that.
Yeah, these are no joke.
Yes. So the curtain, the only thing remaining from the curtain, because those came down, is the pylons. And if you go through the park, you can see the massive structures on the side of the road. And they still, there was conduit all the way to there. Now, when they decommissioned, the scrappers knew.
They dug it up. Just
They
random
pulled
people
it all
at
out,
night came
yeah.
and ripped it out.
They could.
No way.
Yeah. So all the steel, all the towers got sold for scrap metal.
Right.
And any piece of copper that was left got taken as well.
Oh, that's super.
But
cool.
at the same time, it was easy because we've got antennas here. We're like, there's conduit there.
Yeah.
Maybe rusty. There's
it's still
conduit.
there,
It's
yeah,
still there.
yeah.
So we're lucky enough to be able to use those. So.
Jocelyn, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
This is awesome. I think we're probably wrapping.
Yeah, we're
Is
pretty
there
much
anything else
done.
you need we should mention?
If you're in the Cincinnati area, we're open.
Yes, please come. And hours again, 9 p.m. every weekday or every
No.
day except for Sunday
For Hamvention.
for Hamvention.
For Hamvention, yes. Sunday we close at 5, but every day we close at 9, open at 1. And if you're outside Hamvention, it's Saturday and Sunday, 1 through 4. And we do have an open house for hams on 7 to 9. The museum is shut down, but you get to operate and learn, talk.
Oh, right.
talk
You can
ham
actually
radio.
go into Ham Shack.
Yes.
Okay, right on.
Thank you to all my Patreon supporters. You can support me on Patreon. There is a link in the description below. And to all my tankers out there, go forth and conquer.